For Bad Sisters, one of the really important things was grounding it where it's set. So Dublin, Ireland. A lot of my research was street style. I actually did a lot of walking around the mall, around town, photographed people, went on a recce or two with Dearbhla. So it was deep research from that sense. In the show, what's really important to us was to feature craftspeople and designers in Ireland who would be people that would be readily accessible to the Garvey sisters.
Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com or, of course, follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week we interview a film professional, and this week I'm joined by costume designer Camille Benda, who recently worked on the Apple TV Plus show Bad Sisters, both season 1 and 2. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
How did you get involved with the series originally?
Originally, I had a reach out from my agent in the UK. She's at United Agents. And she said, hey, there's this new script that came in and they're interested in meeting you. And so I said, okay, cool. I was on a vacation in Death Valley, so I cracked open the script. I always print a hard copy because it's old school, and I guess I'm old school now. And so when I started reading it, I couldn't put it down. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is a really incredible project.
Wow. And so, because one of the things when I was reading up about you, you do real like heavy research or intensive research for each project, and it's about sort of figuring out the history behind things. So, like, what was the research like for the show, and how did that sort of guide you in your choices?
Well, so for this show, particularly for Bad Sisters, I think one of the really important things was grounding it where it's set. So Dublin, Ireland, and that's versus anywhere else. The Dublin style for women and men is so cool, so effortless, and the city is just such a global, interesting place. So when I first met our director, Dearbhla Walsh, one of the big things we talked about was that it's not London, it's not Paris, it's not Milan, it's specifically Dublin. So a lot of my research was street style, talking to people. When I got over to London and Ireland, I actually did a lot of walking around the mall, around town, photographed people, went on a recce or two with Dearbhla. So it was deep research from that sense.
Mhm.
Then we looked at late 90s, early 2000s style. We looked at a lot of European designers, but most importantly, I think we spent a lot of time finding independent Irish designers who did knitwear or jeans or shoes or accessories, and even down to workout wear. We have a couple workout brands in the show that are Irish workout brands specifically. So that was really important to us, was to feature craftspeople and designers in Ireland who would be people that would be readily accessible to the Garvey sisters.
I sort of got into VFX by accident. I always had a technical interest in photography, and especially as it relates to movie making. There's something magical about the ability to believe something is happening when it isn't. So I went as a live action producer into a company called Bob Abel and Associates. Then I would have to, have a meeting about how do we do this effect that's in this commercial, and I never got the straight answer I was looking for. I have camera knowledge, so it's like, since it's kind of ambiguous, why don't I just grab a camera and we'll try it out. You have to figure out what tells the story and use every trick in the book to solve your problem. I am Rob Legato, and this is my course on visual effects.
It's interesting that you would say that, like using the craftspeople, because one of my questions was going to be about
Yeah.
with globalization, like the gap is everywhere, and
Yes.
that sort of starts to influence, you know, the way people dress, because it's like, oh, I can get jeans for whatever the price is, right?
Yeah.
So do you, in this show then, like, did you sort of specifically say, like, we're staying away from, you know, more modern, or not modern, but like more, I guess, populist styles and in the look?
Definitely. So I think one of the things I always say about modern shows is shop where the character shops.
Hmm.
So shop where they're going to shop anyways, if at all possible. So we worked out sort of a creative plan where I might go to the grocery store to shop
Hmm.
for Ursula because she's a mom and she has a full-time job as a nurse, so she doesn't have that much time to shop, maybe except for special occasions. So with Ursula, we thought, oh, well, she might buy jeans at the grocery store, or a
Hmm.
sweatshirt or something like that while she's running errands with her family. For Sharon Horgan, we did a lot of vintage and a lot of special pieces, knitwear, and special brands because she might have a little more time to do some shopping. And Sharon herself has such fantastic taste. Um, and then we had Fiona Shaw join us for season 2.
Hmm.
And so we talked a lot about her costumes and the fact that she might buy some more modern practical things. So we did shop at Uniqlo for the coral red colored parka that she wears, but that she would have things in her closet from the 90s, 2000s, 2010s. And she didn't have that much money and was quite conservative, church-going Irish woman.
Hmm.
So maybe her funeral dresses are 30 years old because she bought them for the last funeral and then saved them for the next one.
Interesting. So I would love to know, like, because I feel like once you get the actors in, it's like you have your ideas of like this is how I'm going to tackle it, but then the actors are going
Yeah.
to come in. It's like, you know, they have different opinions, they have different approaches to the characters. So like, what did you come in with, and then how did you work with the actors to create the final look?
So I usually put together research boards, mood boards, color palettes. I won't necessarily do color palettes always uh, from just Pantone or flat colors. I might look at colors from nature because everything we wear is lit in
Hmm.
some way atmospherically anyway. So it's nice to see different tones and how things will work in the light. So I'll do a lot of color palettes that have sort of changing colors of the same version. And then I'll talk through with the actors what their ideas are, show them my boards, and we'll kind of work out a plan for the character. So the first fitting often is about fit in terms of what actually works, what fits. And usually a second fitting progresses into talking more about the deep nuances of the character. And
Interesting.
then as the actors bring things to the table, I'm able to kind of pivot and say, oh, that's a cool idea. Let me go look for this. Let me go look for that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what were the differences then from season 1 to season 2? Like, how did the characters look evolve over the series?
Yeah, so we kept a lot of the season 1 continuity pieces in storage. And because of that, we could wrap them into season 2. So you'll see things repeat,
Hmm.
especially special pieces that we've seen in the Garvey house, like the Barber jacket that's burgundy and green and I think tan. That's always hanging in the house somewhere, and Eva wears it, and Becca wore it, and Ursula wears it to go to the cliff in the beginning and ending sequences.
Yeah.
So what's really interesting about that is that we're finding a through line from season 1 into season 2. For season 2, the script was very busy, adding new characters, lots of dynamic things happening. So all of the Garvey girls maybe add some new pieces, move forward in their style. You'll see Ursula getting a little more polished as she sort of comes into herself. You'll see Bibi staying on the same through line of her minimalist aesthetic. And you'll see Becca doing her style, which is kind of very eclectic and very quirky. So it was about finding new pieces that push that forward. For Sharon's character, Eva, she decides that she's going to quit her job early in the series. So there was much less workwear and a lot more casual wear. So we spent a lot more time thinking about how would Eva wrap that into her world. And then she also had a number of workout scenes because she's working with her menopause coach and going jogging. So how do we make the workout clothes look stylish and interesting and not lose the thread of her aesthetic look?
Interesting. Now, you also teach in costume design, and I'm wondering, you know, a lot of people will say, okay, like, what do you bring from the industry into the class? But I'm wondering, what have you learned from the students or picked up from the students that you take to your sets now?
That's such a great question. And it's something that we talk about a lot at CalArts where I teach, is that the new generations are going to be the ones making the films and the TV shows and the plays and immersive content. So for us designers that might be kind of mid-career and be thinking about what their next steps are, part of it is to mentor and support students who are coming up. I think what I'm bringing with me is a sort of more informal, more, I would say, a Gen Z vibe from my students. And that can encompass new brands or new ways of looking at things. But also, the world is changing. There's a lot more technology, there's a lot more social media. So, what I think I'm seeing now is as you do a show that has characters from the very oldest to the very youngest, there's really such a broad spectrum of dress styles. So all the way from my students' super current styles to if somebody's 90 years old, they might still be dressing as if they're in the 1980s or the 1970s. They might still be modern, but those are kind of generational differences. Also, I think there's a more openness in these new generations about who you are. I've had a lot of students comment on working hours if I say to them how many hours I actually work. And so I think there's a lot more interest in a holistic lifestyle, like kind of making sure that you're not only working 16, 18 hours a day, but what does your actual life look like? So there might be a bit of a change in that sense of people wanting a complete life rather than maybe working 6 days a week, huge hours.
Yeah. It's funny that you would say that because I was working with the union on something here and we were chatting and I say, oh yeah, every so often I teach classes. And they were like, can you do us a favor and tell them that a day is 12 hours? Your day rate. And I was like, what? And they're like, the number of students who come in and are like, you know, work 8 hours today. And you're like, not on this production.
No, it's true. But then I explained to them that it's freelance and it's ebbs and flows. So one of the things that I think students learn as they go into the industry is how to pace themselves.
Now, I'd love to know in season 2, there's like a wedding scene, and I'm wondering like how you approached that scene and what were some of the struggles that you encountered.
Well, so we had the whole wedding scene was its own film. It was so beautifully shot by Tony Slater-Ling and Dearbhla Walsh, our director, and they really immerse themselves in the round. So it almost has a theater aspect to it where you feel like you're standing in the middle of everything that's going on. It's set at the Garvey house, and they wanted the wedding to be looking over the sea. And so everything was built outside. There was a big kind of pavilion outside. The set designer, Candida Otten, is incredible. So everything was meant to be like twinkly and late summer and beautiful. But then Storm Agnes was coming across Scotland and hit the, let's see, east side of Ireland when we were shooting. So it was pouring rain, huge winds, and what looks like in the TV show a kind of warm, light summer day was actually torrential rain and mud. So Dearbhla had the brilliant idea of putting Anne-Marie Duff as Grace in her wedding dress. At one point, the idea was that the sisters pin up the bottom of her dress so it doesn't get muddy. So you can see in one scene, there's actual clips from the kitchen all around the dress, and then she's wearing Wellington boots. So it was a real mix of weather and filming outside. And one of the main things we wanted was the wedding to feel informal and warm and very Irish. So a lot of the guests are kind of smart, casual, a bit more eclectic. Dearbhla had the great idea of each sister inviting 5 guests. So I dressed 5 guests of different ages as if they came from each sister's world. So maybe the nurses were a bit more traditional. Becca's friends were super, super trendy and cool. So we did that. And then Sharon had the idea of the yellow bridesmaids dresses. So that's where the yellow came from, and it really warmed everything up.
Now I heard that the wedding dress it was just a one-off, like there was no other.
Yes.
How nervous were you with the mud?
Very. Well, because originally what we had done was we had spoken with Helen Cody, the designer, and it sounded like the dress could have repeats. And then it turned out that in looking into getting a second one, because we would typically have a second one for mud and weather, it turned out that they couldn't get the laser cut flower fabric in time. So we decided we were just going to go with one dress. And while you're shooting, it is the case that with something like that, the actors will go back to the dressing room or the tent and stay warm and get out of the dress. We re-steam it so that it looks exactly like it did in the previous shot. So it was doable.
I was gonna say, like, did you have knockoffs that kind of looked like it to get around it in certain shots, or
We did talk about that, and everybody talked through what the plan might be. I talked to my team, and we decided that most things that could happen to the dress during the shooting, I think it was over 3 or 4 days, were solvable.
Yeah.
So
No, there was the other scene I really liked in episode 1 was the horse racing scene where they're at,
so
which
fun.
had so many extras, and I'm wondering how you tackled that.
Yes. So that was interesting because we had 2 visits to Leopardstown Racecourse. So we were there in sort of late summer and we had beautiful sunny days. And then in February, and it was cold and overcast. Luckily, the weather reflected the mood. So the first racecourse scene is obviously her bachelorette party. And so the first thing we did was I suggested to Dearbhla that maybe if Anne-Marie's in red, it's very easy to track her through all the scenes. And that's something we've seen in Schindler's List. And the movie set in Venice that has the red coat in it it's gone out of my mind, but it'll come back. And that's like a 70s movie, and we see like a little child in a red coat. So I love the idea of red as a film device to bring a character through action. So once Anne-Marie was in red, we took red out of all of the other crowd. We had 400 supporting artists. A lot of them were very used to going to the races, so they brought their own races gear.
Oh, interesting.
And the Irish are incredibly good at dressing up. They love occasions. So what they'll do is really dress. The women look incredible, the men will wear suits. And so we were very lucky with our wonderful extras, and we created a color palette, which was purples and yellows, which is also kind of the through line colors of the whole show. You'll see them dotted around, not only in the costumes, but in the production design.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. It gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career. Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, and being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now. Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
That explains why the jockey had the purple and yellow checker.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. And I got to design that one. So I really enjoyed putting some thought into the color combinations for that.
Is there a particular design that you've done for the series that you're like, that's my favorite design,
Oh my gosh.
or a couple that might stand out for you?
One of my favorites, because my husband is just watching season 2 right now. So I was kind of watching with one eye last night. When Becca goes to see Matt's band play,
Mhm.
that's one of my favorite looks of hers. It's so her, and Eve wore it so beautifully. There's some Yohji Yamamoto clog heel shoes that are black leather, and then she has a great pair of jeans and a sweater from Tack, which is black and white, sort of psychedelic pattern, reflecting kind of how she's feeling at the time. She's really ambivalent, and she's really feeling very black and white about her relationship and where her life is going. And then a beautiful shearling jacket on top of that, that's a checkerboard. So with Becca's character, we get to do a lot of clashing of textures and patterns. I think one of my other favorites was the treadmill outfit that Sharon as Eva wears before the wedding, because Sinead O'Connor had passed away while we were prepping. And so the Irish Princess t-shirt was kind of an homage to Sinead. And then the tracksuit bottoms, the sweatpants, were actually from Grace's character from season 1. So it's as if Eva had stolen Grace's, but then she has a brand new pair of running shoes and a lovely wool cardigan that she puts on later. So what I love about that outfit is it has a lot of meaning, even though it doesn't look like it. So I always love clothes to look realistic and perfect for the scene or appropriate for the scene, but to have a lot of backstory.
Now, I have one last question for you. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
Gosh. I have 3,
Okay.
if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Because I can't decide. I love, well, probably 4. So I love slapstick kind of 70s, 80s films.
Oh, okay. Like
So,
Airplane and all those.
Yeah. So The First Naked Gun,
Yeah.
Top Secret with Val
Oh,
Kilmer.
that's such a underrated.
So underrated.
I just showed it to a friend because
Oh, did you?
he's like, what is it? He's like, I love the Naked Guns. I'm like, you gotta see Top Secret.
You got to see Top Secret. Yeah, and actually one of the jokes with my friends is if we are going to pick a movie, they'll say, "Have you seen Top Secret?" So it's a running joke for about 40 years now, I think, or 30 years. So Top Secret, and then Real Genius, which is the 80s Val Kilmer film about him being a genius student at like a Caltech or MIT type place.
Okay.
If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend. And then the original Top Gun.
It's a good one.
So, and we just got a kitten called Maverick.
Yeah,
So-
it's so funny because I showed my daughter just the opening sequence of Top Gun, and she's like, "When can we watch this movie?" And she's like,
Yeah.
7.
How old is your daughter?
She's
if I
7.
may
Well, she
ask?
just turned 8. Like just.
Oh, she just turned 8. Mine's 12, and I think we watched it when she was 9. And there's something about it that I think, because maybe if you're a girl, you're watching it in this hyper masculine with many layers, it's
Mhm.
kind of fascinating on lots of levels. So I'm sorry I don't have very esoteric art house films to mention. There's
Yeah,
a
the
lot
top-
of films I love that are esoteric and art house, but I would say my favorite films are the feel good, silly, crazy ones.
I think Top Secret made my day. So.
Oh, yay! I love it.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
And that's it for our show this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com or, of course, on Instagram at filmmaker_you. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.